Hello and welcome to News Central. I'm Felicity Ezewike. Here are the top stories making headlines beyond the continent. We begin the news in Europe, where the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, has resigned on Tuesday, saying he stepped down in sorrow after failing to ensure there was a proper investigation into allegations of abuse by a volunteer at Christian summer camps decades ago. Welby, the spiritual leader of 85 million Anglicans worldwide, has been called to step down after a report last week revealed that he had done nothing to stop what it called the most prolific serial abuser in the history of the Church of England. Joining me on the news to discuss this further is broadcaster Tamsanga Johu. He joins from London. Thanks for giving us your time. Given the severe abuse case connected to the church, how do you anticipate the public in England and abroad responding to this resignation?
Yes, Felicity, thank you for having me, and also good evening to your listeners. This is just one of many cases that come. Remember, this is coming at the back of similar churches like the Roman Catholic and others, who worship in a similar way, looking after young people who grow up in the church, having all these opportunities for abusers to have access to young people. It has always been about whether the churches or the leaders of these church organizations are taking the complaints that come from these young people or victims of abuse even later when they're adults, whether they would take those things and those complaints seriously and support them to address them, or maybe there was an issue of cover-up. So the way that most people are responding in the United Kingdom and others within the Church of England is more or less looking at all those issues of safeguarding, whether the more could have actually been done, but seeing this as just another group of young people or adults now, but who were young people at the time, were being added to the list of those that were abused in the past. Felicity?
How should churches handle abuse cases in light of Welby's resignation?
In a way, even the Church of England, even Justin Welby, when he was resigning, a lot of people within the infrastructure of the church will tell you that now there are a lot of safeguarding things. When he came in, he increased the number of people that work within the safeguarding department of the church, from single figures to double figures. In actual fact, there are loads of people now that are handling all those issues. They are making sure that there are safeguards in place at every branch or congregation or congregate, parish. They are making sure that there's a way that people can raise these issues. Even if you're young and you believe that you have not been treated well, you can report. And then they have a mechanism in place to escalate those issues and look at the people who volunteer with the church, as well as those that serve with the church. So there's a lot of safeguarding that is now in place. But unfortunately for this one, this is historic. People are basically saying that, well, Archbishop, you were told about these things in 2013. You didn't do enough to escalate it, to make sure that justice was done, because justice that is delayed for these young people that were abused at the time. There are also indications that he was close in the 70s and 80s to John Smith, who is the alleged perpetrator in this case. Even when John Smith left the United Kingdom to go to Zimbabwe and also to go to South Africa, they continued to be in touch, and there's indications that Justin Welby used to send money to John Smith even when he was in Zimbabwe. So in this case, they are saying, well, we might have safeguarding arrangements in place now, but had something been done, maybe those victims of John Smith that were abused in Zimbabwe and South Africa could have been spared, something that is similar to what happened to those that are now reporting and are in the list of victims in the United Kingdom. Phyllis?
Before I let you go, what do you think how this will impact on how religious organizations address similar issues in the future?
I think it will impact especially those in Africa, places like Nigeria and others that are very religious. If you look at Europe and the United Kingdom in particular, the number of people who identify as Christian or Church of England is going down all the time. You are having all these church buildings being converted into pubs and clubs and residential places. So there's a different relationship in Europe, at least, between religion and day-to-day life. Most people are no longer going to church every Sunday. But when it comes to places like Africa, Nigeria in particular, where a lot of people still believe and, there's that divinity element, this will be very damaging. There will be splits within the church, especially. It's going to take maybe about 6 months to choose the next Archbishop of Canterbury. And that process is going to be very, very tough. A lot of questions will be asked. There will be speculation, there will be torch, there will be spotlights put on the lives and the conduct of all those people that are eligible going forward. So I think we wait to see how it's going to affect people in general. The Catholic Church was damaged by this. The the Church of England will definitely be damaged by these kind of reports. The report itself, the Markey report, is very, very damaging. When you read it, it's distressing in terms of the abuse that these victims went through. And there will be legal issues. The case will still continue. They will still need to be compensated. They will still need to be cancelled. They will still need to be looked after. But more importantly, just making sure that this does not happen to any more children or young people who want to be able to be close to the church or serve within the church. Felicity?
I certainly hope this will be the end. I certainly hope so. Thank you for speaking with us.
Thank you.
Away from that, the host of the UN Climate Summit in Azerbaijan, President Ilham Aliyev, on Tuesday defended fossil fuels and the right of countries to exploit them as dozens of world leaders arrived for the COP29 conference. In his opening address, Aliyev said Azerbaijan had been subject to slander and blackmail for its use of fossil fuels and that no country should be judged for its natural resources.
Today, Azerbaijan's share in global oil production is 0.7%. In global gas production is 0.9%. But fake news media of the country, which is #1 oil and gas producer in the world and produces 30 times more oil than Azerbaijan, call us petrostate. To accuse us that we have oil is the same like to accuse us that we have more than 250 sunny days a year in Baku. Countries should be judged by other criteria. For instance, level of unemployment in Azerbaijan, it is 5.4%. Level of poverty, it is 5.2%.
Prime Minister Keir Starmer says Britain would cut greenhouse gas emissions by 81% by 2035 as he committed the country to a more ambitious climate goal at the United Nations COP29 Climate Summit. The new goal is in line with a recommendation from a committee of climate advisors last month who said the target should exceed the current 78% cut of emissions measured against 1990 levels. According to Starmer, he wants the United Kingdom to be a first mover in the global transition towards clean energy at COP29 summit in Baku.
The government recognises that the world stands at a critical juncture in the climate crisis. And the United Kingdom not only has a critical role to play, but also an opportunity to grasp. The chance to maximise opportunities for Britain and make us more secure in the here and now. And everybody knows there's a transition, an energy transition. These things happen quite rarely, once in a generation, usually, perhaps a little bit longer than that, where there's a global transition on energy. And the lesson from history is to go into that transition with a clear plan for a just outcome, but also to take advantage of being a first mover in that. And that's what I want us to be, which is why I say there's a race on for the next generation of jobs. They're good, well-paid jobs. Other countries are in that race. I want to be in it, and I want to win it for the UK.
Earlier, News Central correspondent Bettina Uweli joined us on the news to speak in COP29.
We are still on the talk about ending carbon emissions in different countries. Now, last year in Dubai at the COP29, Nigeria especially made a promise that they were going to reduce carbon emissions, reduce gas flaring, which makes sense when we look at why President Tinubu has been trying to push for the switch from fuel to CNG. But however, we are yet to receive the Nigerian delegates in terms of government to come here to Azerbaijan and, have their own space and say what they think is going on in the country. Now, these promises that were made in Dubai, how far have we gone in keeping them? How far have we gone in trying to end the carbon emissions? We still have until 2030, but now in 2024, the question is going to be how far, what have we done to make sure that 2030 is indeed a vision that we can aspire to meet?
Contentious bill in its final third reading that outlaws the propaganda of childlessness, the most recent action aimed at what Moscow portrays as liberal Western ideologies. Facing an aging population and low birth rates, Moscow is seeking to reverse a demographic slump accentuated by its military offensive in Ukraine that threatens its economic future. MPs in the Duma lower house of parliament voted unanimously in favor of the draft bill, which would apply to materials online, in media, advertising and in films to promote rejection of childbearing. EU Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell has pledged unwavering support for Ukraine on the first visit by a top Brussels official after Donald Trump's win. The volatile Republicans' victory in the United States presidential election has set nerves jangling in Ukraine and Europe that Trump could end Washington's support for Kyiv's fight against Russia's invasion. On the campaign trail, Trump cast doubt on maintaining the vast U.S. military and financial aid to Ukraine and said he could cut a quick deal to end the war. Borrell said Russia's President Vladimir Putin doesn't want to negotiate and will not negotiate unless he is forced to do so.
We're privileged to see you again and again. Thank you that during this war you've always been 100% totally on our side, on the side of Ukrainian people. You don't need any details about this war because you've been during the challenging days, very difficult days, tough moments.
I remember very well when we met first. It was much before the war started. And then you explained me your plans to take Ukraine in the European path, to fight against corruption, to push for the modernization of the society and economy of Ukraine. And happily then the war came. The war came, you and all the Ukrainian people have been fighting in order to reject the aggression. And we from the European Union, we have been trying to support you, or supporting you as much as we could, maybe not as much as needed, but doing a great effort that brings the European Union to the first support.
Let's also tell you that New Zealand's Prime Minister Christopher Luxon has formally apologized to victims of abuse in the country following an inquiry into one of the country's biggest abuse scandals. The historic apology was delivered in Parliament after findings from a report confirmed that over 200,000 children and vulnerable adults experienced abuse while under the care of the state and faith-based institutions between 1950 and 2019. The inquiry, which took about 6 years to conclude and included interviews with more than 2,300 Survivors of abuse in care institutions documented a wide range of abuses, including rape of children, forcefully giving up children for adoption, use of seizure-inducing electroconvulsive therapy, and forced labor. The government also promised to reform the care system. Let's go on a short break. When we return, we'll tell you that the wave of Israeli strikes has hit South Beirut in Lebanon. Join us again. Thanks for staying with us. In North America, in his first remarks since his vice president and chosen successor, Kamala Harris, lost the presidential election, Biden delivered a pep talk from the White House Rose Garden on a sunny Thursday that clashed with Democrats' black mood in the wake of their devastating electoral losses. Biden pledged a smooth transfer of power to Trump and expressed faith in the endurance of the American experiment. But what happens now to the Democratic Party? For News Central, Afia Hagen has more.
And then you wonder why it gets shot at, right? You know, only consequential presidents get shot at.
As they stare down 4 more years of Trump's presidency, the bleak outcome of the election has left Democrats bereft, unmoored and furious when they previously thought this week would be the cause of joy and celebration. They are now heading into a brutal political wilderness, with its current leaders tarnished by advanced age and a catastrophic defeat.
A thank you to President Joe Biden for 4 years of strong, historic leadership.
The stark reality has left Democrats asking themselves the same question over and over again. How did we get here? Although a handful of Democrats suggested Harris should have done more to distance herself from Biden, few party members appear to blame the nominee, who was credited with running the best possible campaign given her roughly 100-day window to close a considerable gap with Trump. Some Democrats blamed Biden, who withdrew from the presidential race in July, only after mounting pressure from his party after a disastrous debate performance against Trump. In a damning indictment, Nancy Pelosi, the former House Speaker, who was applauded for her role in pressuring Biden to step aside, suggested the party should have held an open primary. The party must now look to a new generation of leaders, a pivot that many argue should have come earlier. Progressive Democrats will probably be looking to popular lawmakers like Congresswoman Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez to shape the country's future. Other rank-and-file members have pointed to Gavin Newsom, the California governor, who's already trying to Trump-proof his state, as an example for resisting the new administration. For now, though, the Democrats who poured their hearts and souls into electing Harris as the first woman, first black woman and first Asian American woman to serve as president seem exhausted. They have spent most of the past decade warning the country about the dangers of Trump and his political philosophy, only for a majority of American voters to send him back to the White House. Right now, Democrats are taking the time to grieve. And then eventually they will start to pick up the pieces of their party. For News Central, I'm Afia Hagen.
Joining us now for further analysis is Afia Hagen. Afia, we just saw your report, but now that the Democratic Party are on their way out, how can we expect Trump to remake the U.S. government?
Well, Trump's transition is well underway and his cabinet is shaping up. And he does have, some main issues that he talked about on the campaign trail that he really will be focusing on, particularly in those first 100 days when he is in power. Some of those promises, of course, mass deportations, a lot has been talked about this. He has appointed someone who is going to be the head of, that department. His deportations, his border czar, as he has been called, Tim Holman, and he is going to be in charge of that. Now, this aggressive sort of rounding up, particularly of undocumented migrants, of criminals is something that he really campaigned very strongly on, and it's something that he is insisting, along with the people he's appointing to his cabinet, that will go ahead. He's also vowed to move federal and government agencies out of DC. He wants to reclassify a large portion of the civilian workforce and make it easier to fire federal workers as well. He also wants to take a lot of power away from Congress. One of his big plans is to challenge the current governing norms that they have within place and ultimately give himself and his party much more power.
There have been some more new appointments to the incoming Trump White House. What can you tell us?
Yeah, so in the past sort of 15 minutes, we've heard that we have got a pick for the U.S. ambassador to Israel. That is going to be Mike Huckabee. Now, he is someone who is a strong supporter of Israel, an evangelical Christian, someone who's also run for president a couple of times. And I do think Israel will be very pleased about that appointment. Governor Kristi Noem is going to be his Homeland Security Secretary. Mark Rubio is going to be Secretary of State. Now, he was someone that voted against more funding for Ukraine, so that could be something that could be problematic for Volodymyr Zelensky going forward. We know that Trump has picked a former New York Republican Representative Lee Zeldin to serve as his administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency. He's expected to announce Stephen Miller as his top immigration advisor, who will also serve as the White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy. And Elise Stefanik yesterday was appointed the U.S. Ambassador for the United Nations. Tom Homan, who I mentioned earlier on, is going to be the acting director, used to be the acting director for the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and the last administration is going to be in charge of the nation's borders. It's very notable that all these people he's surrounding himself with are people that have been very loyal to Trump, especially over this campaign cycle. And we know how much Trump admires and holds loyalty very, very dear. So if you've been loyal to President Trump or former President Trump, President-elect Trump in this past election cycle, you can expect those loyalists to pick up positions in this second-term cabinet.
I'm sure we'll be circling back to you in the coming days with further updates as he continues to unveil his team. Thank you for speaking with us. In Asia, police officials confirms that at least 35 people have been killed and 43 injured after a car plunged into a crowd outside a sports center in China's southern Zhuhai city. The hit and run took place at 7:48 p.m. when a man drove a small off-road vehicle into a large group of people exercising outside the sports center. It was only reported by the police on Tuesday. Zhuhai police said the suspect, a 62-year-old man surnamed Fan, was being treated at a hospital after hurting himself with a knife in his car. Although the police described the attack as serious and vicious, they added that none of the 43 injured were in imminent danger. That's all we have for you at this time. You can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274. We're on Avo TV and YouTube. Many thanks as always for watching. I'll see you at 10.